Thank you. Hi, I'm Linda. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Linda.
And I'm feeling a little overexposed lately because I just spoke at Keeping It Sober the 1st of June. So I thought, well, okay, I haven't been out there adding very much to my story lately, but I'll try to tell you what it was like then, kind of how it was in the middle and how it is today. My sobriety date is September 17th of 2006, and I am really grateful for that. It's made the biggest change in my life of anything I've ever done. Having kids, getting married, all that stuff kind of pales to the changes in my life that's made. I'm hoping that tonight I can kind of tell you a little bit about how I grew up and some of the things I thought were important. They might not be real important to you, but those are the things that I remember. And it's funny what you remember as you grow in sobriety. There are things that I used to believe about my story and really think they were true. And then later on, I go, it didn't quite happen that way. And it's funny how it unfolds. And I noticed that even when I spoke the other night, I said one thing, and I'm going to try to say that same idea or talk about that a little bit and correct it. So, we can erase the old recording, and maybe this time I'll tell the truth. Actually, I didn't lie. I just made a mistake, but whatever. As I grew up, I was the middle child of 3 girls. My dad was a fairly high-ranking Air Force officer, and we were lucky because we didn't move a lot. A lot of military kids grow up being, shuffled from one base to another lifestyle, and I really didn't. My older sister is 2 years older, and she was born with a thyroid deficiency at birth. And they just didn't test babies then for the same things they test them for now. And she's about 6th grade, 7th grade level. She's retarded, and yet she can write letters. I got a letter from her today. She's a drama queen. She'll always tell me all this stuff that's going on in her letters, and they're all kind of sketchy all over the place. But that's how she operates. The thing with her in my life, I'm being 2 years younger, I always kind of felt like I had to protect her. There were always kids who would call up on the phone and say stuff like that on the phone, and I'd say, don't ever call here again, and hang up the phone on them. I can remember as she was, growing up, I could kind of con her into doing things for me. And she also played as a foil kind of for my mom. Mom's attention was always focused on her and what her needs were, which meant I could get away with more. And I really quickly figured out that, as long as she was in front of the limelight, that I could go over here and do whatever I wanted, and I did. I have a sister who's 7 years younger than I am, and she and I are great friends. She is I was always the over-responsible, always trying to make you think I was doing more than I was really doing, always kind of manipulating and making it look like I was running the show, because, of course, I thought I was. And my younger sister, she never tried to put on any kind of show because she didn't have to. If I would lie and say I was going to a dance when I was really going to go out drinking with friends, whereas my younger sister would say, oh, we're going to a party, And by then, my parents were so worn down, they didn't say anything. So, she always got away with murder, I always thought. But she and I are really good friends today, and she's kind of the responsible, kind of do-it-by-the-book person, and very much like my dad. And so she's just I always call her kind of like the boss of the world, because she's the person in our family who organizes our family trips and makes sure that we all get where we're supposed to go. If you're going to go on a little tour and find things, she's the one you want to have leading, because she'll always get us there. My first memories of drinking, I can remember always we would have little bits of champagne, or my dad would make us creme de menthe and stuff like that as kids. So it wasn't like it was forbidden fruit. It was around our house, and there was always parties where people were drinking. My dad was involved in the space missile program, and my dad's I think, probably one of the smartest men I've ever met in my whole life. And his friends were test pilots and rocket scientists and people who were involved in going to the moon and all kinds of things like that. So I met those people. They came to my wedding when I got married. I mean, I met those guys, but I didn't ever know them as what they really were. I knew them as Uncle Dale and, so-and-so like that. I never realized until after I got a lot older how much a part those people were of that whole era. But my dad was one of those guys who always told me I could do anything that I wanted to do. All I had to do was try. And he'd always say, you're smart, you can do this, you can do that. And so there was a part of me that wanted to believe that and do whatever, try to do lots of things, and I did. But then there was always that part of me that said, maybe that's not right. Maybe I really am a goof up. And so there was always that kind of like mixed message, like what I would say, I could do well in school if I applied myself, but then there was always that part of me that said, well, maybe you just were absent the day they explained algebra. It's just, I don't know. So I had kind of like this thing, and I grew up in Southern California. I grew up on the beach. We thought that everything that was happening in the world was all our life. We just thought we were the center of it, And that's not hard to think when you're a teenager, but it's kind of added to by the fact that people like the Beach Boys and the Righteous Brothers and all those kind of names in music at that time, we knew them. And, I wouldn't go through. I sold Bill Medley a house. I mean, I knew all these people over the years. So we thought we were pretty hot stuff. Really. When I started off in the summertime, we'd sit on the beach and fry ourselves, and there was a little drinking going on, but not a lot. But it was always competitive. It was always like we'd start the summer out with a new hard raft so that you could knee paddle on it before I was old enough to have a surfboard. And we'd paddle out 3 miles, tag up on the fishing barge, and you had to tag up or you weren't going to be popular this summer. That's period it. Mm-hmm. And so the fishermen are throwing bottles at us and yelling at us. And, there's all these little shark fins over here because they're chumming, they're fishing. And so you had to go out there, tag up, and come back. And that was the beginning of summer. And that's kind of how we lived. Everything was always kind of on the edge, just kind of push it a little harder, push it a little further. And not unlike a lot of teenagers, I guess. My first real recollection of getting drunk was at the end of my 8th grade year. I think we had a half-day schedule or something. It was like right at the end of the school year. And a bunch of us decided that since my mom was gone playing golf that day, what were we thinking, that we would just go get out the liquor out of the liquor closet at cabinet and sit down on the kitchen floor and drink it. So there were about 3 or 4 of us girls, and we just sat in the kitchen and started drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking, and we got really smashed. And we decided, one of my best friends, Patty, who was my best friend growing up, decided that she wanted to walk down to the beach to see her boyfriend. So, okay, well, we'll walk down to the beach because we thought that'd be pretty funny anyway. We'll just go down to the beach because we're stupid. Anyway, on the way down there, Patty fell down and she hit her teeth on a curb and she broke out her first 2 teeth, and her mouth was bleeding and all this other stuff, and we kind of doctored her up and stuff, and she still wanted to walk down to the beach to see Ralph. Okay. So we're barking like, Ralph, because that's we were teasing her, because that's what she sounded like. So we walked down to the beach. It's this big long ramp down to the beach, and everybody's making a big fuss over us because 1, Patty's all bloody, and 2, because we were drunk, we were just being jerks. And pretty soon the lifeguard came over. One of the lifeguards came over, and he saw us, and he decided that she needed to go to the hospital, that this wasn't really going to just get well by itself. And we really needed that. We needed something to kind of bring us back to reality because we were smashed, and we just thought, that's what happens, So anyway, Patty got some caps on her teeth later. She got pretty caps. I don't remember being anything. I think I was grounded, but I don't really remember any consequences from that. There were lots of times where we'd sit on the beach and somebody would kind of sneak a beer or this or that. And in the wintertime, we'd sit in the beach parking lot all the time, which was up above where the actual beach was. And you could look out and really kind of check out the waves and watch the sunset. And we'd pass beers back and forth in the cars all the time. It was just what we did. It wasn't It wasn't like anything, but there was always a party. When you're picked up for a date, your date always had a case of Coors in the car. You know, it was just what we did. And I never really knew anything different. I really didn't. I just thought that's what we did. Most of the guys we dated were quite a bit older. So, you know, somebody'd have an apartment or have a house or something. And so there was always a place to go. I would always lie and say I was going to some place that was approved, whatever that means. And I can remember one time I came in from a date, and it was kind of weird because the front porch lights were off. And when I got to the front door, click, the light goes on. And I'm like, uh-oh, this is bad. So evidently my parents had checked up and found out that I wasn't at the dance where I said I had gone. Maybe they went there. I don't know what they did. But I came in and got interrogated. And as my mother was saying, Sherm, she's drunk, she's drunk. I go, no, I'm not drunk. And I passed out on their bed. So, you know, that was kind of irrefutable evidence, if you will. You wake up the next morning, you feel like heck, and you can't wait to go do it again. So that's kind of how it was. We over time, I was very fortunate. I bailed out of more parties when the cops came than I could even tell you. We did stuff like we went to Catalina one week, and somebody else's older sister was chaperoning us. I have no idea who. We never knew who it was anyway. And we just drank the whole weekend. I saw my friends being marched up the street to the police station, the little police station in Avalon. And, you know, we're sitting there watching them be marched up the street. They get let out at 8 o'clock in the morning. They put them on the steamer and send them home. They're back on the 2 o'clock steamer. You know, no big deal. So for the longest time, nothing really happened. We just did what we did and drank when we wanted to, and I never probably had to ever buy anything. There was always somebody who would supply us with stuff. It was never a matter of getting alcohol. It was always available to us. I can remember people would inject oranges with vodka, and we'd eat them at snack in high school. You know, that was just no big deal. I was a pretty good student when I applied myself. I always managed to hear that little voice that said, you know, Dad's going to be proud of you if you do good. And I always heard that little voice, and I always would try. So I got good grades in school, and I went to college and all that. But when I was in high school, at the end of high school, or no, maybe my junior year in high school, my parents decided to get me off the beach and decided to move from Palos Verdes out to Orange County. And Orange County then wasn't that glamorous. It was avocado trees and orange orchards and all of that. And so, you know, this the way they make it look now with like the housewives of Orange County, it wasn't like that. I had the good fortune of having a lot of friends growing up who I'd known all those years, and then as I got older and we moved, I didn't have any friends. All of a sudden, nobody called. There wasn't anybody to go party with. It was just like, beginning of my junior year, it was awful. I went from, you know, knowing everybody, kind of knowing how to get everywhere, having my life kind of work, to just like this, you know, up against the wall, dead stop. And I really didn't like it very much, so I kind of found a few friends. Most of them were guys. I think I had a few good girlfriends in high school and in elementary school and stuff, but when I moved there, I didn't really make a lot of girlfriends. The girls were kind of a closed little clique, and guys were really a little bit more accepting, actually, for me. I met a guy at the end of my junior year who was just a great guy, and he'd graduated and stuff. He was the youngest guy I'd ever dated. He was only 2 years older than me, and he, you know, we had this nice little kind of thing that went on for a couple of years, and then I went to college. And when I went to college, I figured that I was just a little bit more grown up than he was, and so I, you know, was doing all the college girl kind of living in the dorms, all that stuff. So I kind of detached from him. He comes back into my life in a big way later. And then when I was first in college, I met this other guy, and I remember the day I met him, we were out screwing around with bisqueware that just come out of the kiln in the ceramics lab. And it was all, we were breaking it and just throwing it around and playing baseball with it, because it was all broken stuff the kiln had gone off, and so all this stuff was going to be trashed anyway. So anyway, we're out there playing baseball with this bisqueware, and I met this guy, and it was just it was one of those things almost like a movie. It just kind of goes, and they do that in the movie when they kind of rotate things around. And we just, I don't know, we all went out to lunch together, and from then on, he and I were inseparable. We were inseparable for a long, long time. At that time was Vietnam time, and everybody was pretty much going off everybody's getting drafted if they weren't in school. If they didn't have a deferment, they got drafted. So the guy that I met in high school had gone into the Air Force, so he wouldn't get drafted. And the guy that I met in college had just gotten his law degree at USC and was just done with that, but hadn't yet. He was working, but he didn't have a deferment, and the Army drafted him. And it was the strangest thing, because it was just like I followed him around, and then he followed me around. He went to Northern California for a while, and then I went to school up there, and so we just kind of we just kind of paralleled each other everywhere we could. After he had been in the Army for a couple of years, they took him into some kind of a Secret Service branch of the Army. This is a smart guy. He's a lawyer, so he kind of disappeared. He couldn't tell me where he was. I didn't get to talk to him. And I got bored, and I came home one summer, and I called my old high school boyfriend's mom, and I said, how is he and what's going on? And she said, oh, you should write to him. He always complains he just has cobwebs in his mailbox. You should write to him. So I wrote him this really pretty letter, and then he was going to get off on leave pretty soon. He was in Arizona. And so he came and picked me up for a date in California, and I don't know if I kissed him first or my mom did. It was it's just like that. And we got married 3 months later. And he and I had a, the beginning of our marriage was really good. He did drink like I did, and I was starting to kind of pick it up a little bit. I had always kind of played with it, but I'd never really gotten in a lot of trouble. And in high school, I had just, we just drank a lot, often. It just wasn't a big deal. But we didn't get DUIs. We didn't, I really didn't see a whole lot of consequences. There are consequences, however. They just take different forms. And that kind of shows up in my story a lot. You always pay the price. It just depends on what you're paying, It always shows up. I was married to that man for 25 years. During that period of time, we had 2 children. I have a daughter and a son who are in their 30s. We are saving seats for both of them. They need them, and they talk to me about their drinking. I'm very fortunate now, at least, that they can be honest with me and I can be honest with them. I don't have any effect or any power to change what they're doing, and I know that. All I can just share is my experience with them, and that helps. I think it at least lets them talk to me, and it lets me worry. But, what are you going to do? Over those years when I was married, alcoholism is interesting because it's such a progressive, such a cunning and baffling disease. I didn't really realize that everybody didn't drink the way we did. We'd come home and pour a glass of wine, and then another glass of wine, and I kind of used it to medicate, and cook. And so I would do that. It was just insidious, and I tried lots of ways to control it. I tried buying what we called low lead, which was a lower alcohol content wine. I tried, kind of spacing it out, drinking water in between. I tried all those things to control it. My husband would do the duty of taking my son to soccer and do all that, and I would take my daughter to the stables and ride. We had horses together, and that was really a great thing because a lot of moms with teenage girls, all they could do is go shopping with them. And my daughter and I rode together every day. So she'd get in the car, I'd throw a sandwich at her, she'd get on her breeches and her boots in the car while we're driving out to the barn. We'd get our horses out and ride for a couple hours, get our horses put away as fast as we could so we could get home and feed Dad before he got too drunk. And I always told my kids, I said, you can't argue with a wine bottle, don't ask your dad anything. You know, if there was something that was going to be a conflict, wait till the morning. And so I always kind of tried to manage it, just like I tried to manage everything. I always wanted it to look good. I didn't want anybody on the outside to know kind of how dysfunctional we really were. And there really was no God in our house. We had a lot of things. We had a beautiful home and all the trappings. And we had nothing. We really, you know, and I knew about the last 10 years of our marriage that it was getting really bad. We'd have these alcohol-fueled arguments, and they would, you know, crescendo, boil over, and then we'd be good for the next couple of days. We'd be contrite, we'd be apologetic, we'd be on our good behavior, and then it would start all over again. And I think at the end, I was at that point where, you know how like two ships kind of passing in the night? We lived in the same house, but we just, there was like this tension when we'd pass each other. It was time. It was really time. And I got to the place where I just said, you know, I don't want to live like this anymore. I'm sick of this. And he was getting equally sick of it too. And when we finally agreed to disagree and to get a divorce, then I was really scared. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do now? You know, I was thinking so much about getting away, I wasn't thinking about where I was going to or what I was going to, you know, I'd always worked. I'd been a real estate broker forever. So I thought, you know, well, maybe I'll just be a bag lady. You know, maybe I can't support myself. Maybe I won't be able to make it. And so there was always that fear. And I remember when we were getting divorced, I applied for a loan. I found a house to buy, and I thought, well, I'm going to try. Now, let me back up a minute. I made 3 offers on one house, and I didn't get it because the people weren't going to move when I made the first offer. They changed their mind. All this stuff happened. And I didn't get that house, and I was like so disappointed because I thought, wow, you know, I kept trying to buy this one house, couldn't buy it. And it's funny how God does for us what we can't do for ourselves. I did make an offer on this other house. I got approved for my loan, which was like I was just like knocked out. I was like, I actually could qualify by myself. I actually did it. And about 3 years later, that house I didn't buy burned down. Oh, wow. And it was way too close to my old house and way too close to my ex-husband. He could have driven by any day or night and seen whoever was at my house, you know, and not that I had anything really to hide or anything that great going on, but you know, there were a lot of reasons why that wasn't a good deal for me, and God was kind of sitting on my shoulder all my life, always getting me out of trouble, keeping me from getting into things where I could have. And I can remember at the end of that marriage that I just had so much pain. I felt like everything, it was just, it couldn't get worse. And I almost had one of those anxiety attacks the day actually we were getting ready to move. And my dad and my son started to get into an argument. And the 2 people I love the most in the whole world are starting to get into an argument. And I'm tense and nervous from getting ready to move. And you know, all I could think about is go in and slam a glass of wine down and separate those 2, get them to stop fighting and move. And it was just like that. Everything was just like so traumatic. And when I got to my new house and was actually there for a couple of days, it was like all of a sudden one moment I exhaled and I just went, phew, I'm safe. I can be here now. I'm safe. And I called that my recovery house. I was in Al-Anon for 2 years while I first moved in there. One of my friends at work was in AA, and she told me about Al-Anon. And, of course, I wasn't an alcoholic, right? But, you know, but it was really good for me. I love Al-Anon. Al-Anon allowed me to go through the steps. I had a sponsor. My sponsor helped me work through a lot of my issues. And I want to just say one thing that's really important is I needed those hugs. I needed that love and that support so bad. And so when I came into AA, and sometimes I would feel like I didn't want to give somebody a hug, and my sponsor would say, well, did you ever think that they might like to get a hug today? And I'm like, you know what? I really didn't think of that, but I needed those hugs so much. So when somebody comes in the rooms, remember that they're hurting, and those hugs mean a lot, and those hellos mean a lot, and somebody saying your name means a lot. And I could never, ever have understood that if I hadn't been in that spot where it was just like I would go home and I would just go, oh, whew, there's actually hope. When I always worked. I always went to work, even though we drank every day. I figured out tonight I drank for 46 years. Every day, almost. Not during the day, not at work. I always showed up, but that's a long time. There's a lot of pain involved in that. There's a lot of discontent and a lot of self-loathing involved in that. You wouldn't think it when you'd see the outsides, but on the inside, we were all breaking apart, myself especially. I learned that my opinion about things, or what I think about things, oftentimes sets off a chain reaction of fear, and that then will start propelling me towards taking that next drink, so that I can get myself spun out far enough that drinking seems like a really good, safe option. And it did seem like a really good option to me a lot of the time. That stress and overwork, and I could just have one, and managing my number of drinks. When I first moved, I didn't drink, and I've told this before the other night. I always said that I'd been sober. I was sober while I was dry for about a year when I first got divorced. So I moved into my house, and that's really a lie. I was sober for I didn't drink. Let's put it that way. I wasn't sober. I didn't drink for about 9 months. And then gradually I kind of let myself have a glass of wine here and there. It's interesting what you do remember when, as time goes by, you go, okay, yeah, that really wasn't right because this happened, and now I remember I did. But I remember at one time I went to something at an event, and somebody said, oh, just have a shooter. If you don't drink, it's okay. You can just have a shooter. And I was like, wow, people just don't get that you don't drink, So I quit telling people I didn't drink. I just would come, and I do that today. I bring my Perrier, I bring something to a party. I don't say anything about it. I just don't bring it up. I just don't have to make a big deal out of it, and it's real easy. And bartenders at parties are wonderful. I walk in with a sack and hand them my drink, and they'll pour it for me, put it in a glass, and put some lemon on top of it, and here you go. And it's lovely because they get it. Bartenders get it. They see drunks all the time, so they get it, and they're really kind of your buddy and my buddy in those circumstances. I remember in Al-Anon, and I wanted to be sure and say this tonight, was one of the things, how people say things in meetings and people say things to you over your lifetime that you take home and you keep. And my Al-Anon sponsor told me something. She said that she was talking to me about powerlessness and about worry and all those things that are such a part of our disease and my disease. And she said, I want you to make a list of all the things that you can do something about. And then I want you to cross off all those things. All the things you worry about. I'm not saying it right. All the things you worry about. And so I made the list. And then she says, now cross off all the things that you can do something about. And the rest is all God's work. And that's why you need God in your life. I was like, wow, okay, I can get that. And I carry that with me. I still can use that because I can still say, okay, when I get twisted up, what can you do stuff about? Okay, cross that off, and go do it. And the rest of it, turn the darn stuff over because it's not yours. It's not mine. It's just something that God's going to have to help me with. And so that was one of those things. There's lots of beautiful things I've learned in here. One of the things was that, if I was ever going to have a relationship with anybody, any kind of relationship, alcohol would be the barrier to it. Would always block it. It's kind of, and I think when I finally decided to, let me kind of fast forward here a few things. Went through some years of not drinking, and then I met someone, and gradually that's how I moved here. We would drink, but he wasn't a big drinker, so I would drink, and he would kind of just let me. But that relationship, it just was never quite right. And when that broke up and I moved into my own house that I'm in now, and I'm kind of fast forwarding some stuff here, I got back together with the guy that was the guy from college who'd gone off in the Army and all this other stuff, and we kind of kept tabs on each other from a distance over the years, but we all the same kept tabs. And that was like this person who was really important to me in my life and always had been. And we got back together. I was traveling to California a lot. He would come out here a little bit. He was sole caretaker of his mother, and Momsy got first billing, and I, he wanted to get married, and I was like yes and no, and then finally decided no, that I didn't want to be second to Momsy. But what really was the truth is he didn't know how I drank, and he didn't hardly drink at all. And one night I was at his house, and he was grilling and stuff, and he'd opened this really great bottle of Chardonnay, and I drank the whole bottle. I think I left about that much in the bottom of it while he was cooking. And he came in and he said, God, I wanted some of that, just nicely, just, normal. And I kind of was like, oh, whoops. And, I thought to myself, that's why you should never marry somebody when you don't really know them, because the real person doesn't come out at first. You can be on your best behavior. You can hide. And then, maybe, and I thought, I can't marry this guy because he's smart and he'll figure this out. And yeah. And because I loved him. And I knew that if I loved him and I did that to him, it would be a horrible, horrible injustice. And I didn't tell him why, but I told him I couldn't marry him. I remember flying home and crying all the way across country and coming into my house and just throwing down my bags, just furious with myself. And I drank really hard for that whole next year. I always worked. I always showed up, had a horrible hangover probably almost every day. But I just numbed out and worked like a crazy person because I figured that's how I could escape myself. I was in a personal coaching program and at the time, and we were doing all these exercises, and one of the exercises was, what one thing could you change that would make the biggest difference in your life? And I knew what the answer was when I read the question. The answer was quit drinking. And it didn't take any thought. It wasn't like, oh, let me think about that one. It was like, damn, I know exactly what the answer to that is. Within about a week, I kind of gave it up. I came in, I went to my first meeting at the hospital, and it was the big auditorium, and there were people up on the stage, and it was a big, big room. And I remember the only person I really remember seeing at that meeting was Donnie, big, tall Donnie. And Donnie's standing in the back, and he's got this long kind of a robe on. And I thought, he's probably got a gun under there. I was just terrified, and I came in. I walked up, and I got a white chip. I know I did, and I started going to meetings, and it was it. I was just done. There had been some things that had happened, like getting drunk at my boss's Christmas party, other stuff like that, and I was just done. I just had enough. I got to kind of hurry up here. There was a point in time where, and I got a sponsor, and my sponsor has a sponsor, and it's been really a gift to me because I've learned so many things. I'm not the kind of person who can naturally go quote the big book. I'm not the kind of person who knows where to go for those answers. And having a sponsor in my life has helped me to work my way through it with the guidance of having the program. I need that because I don't naturally go there. I naturally go more kind of like to what I feel. And so I really need and appreciate that. And I remember one day after I'd kind of gone through the sadness a little bit of having to give up my best friend, I remember one day I woke up and I had that little song in my head that it's all right, have a good time, because it's all right. Remember that song? Well, I woke up and I had that song in my brain and I was like, yeah, it is all right. It really is all right. It's always been all right. I just didn't know it. And from then on, it was just kind of like I hit that little turning point where I was like, okay, it's going to be all right. You can do this, and you can hang in there, and you can do it. I still work too hard. Workaholism is probably one of my big places to hide. I have to stop myself and take a breath. When I feel myself getting like really crazy, I stop and I'll use the Serenity Prayer a lot because it really helps me just to kind of settle down, take a breath, back up. Just because you think you're under stress doesn't mean that you have to freak out. And it took me a while to hear myself say that. People would say it and I'd go, okay, that's fine, but I still have to hurry up. And I've learned better how to pace myself and take some time for myself, take better care of myself. Developing a power greater than myself, our understanding of that. Actually, the group's been my higher power for most of the time. People say such gorgeous things, and I hear things in here, and I go, oh my goodness, that's the pearl I needed to hear tonight. I realized that God was all-inclusive at some point, and I realized that your God was big enough to help me with my stuff. I now can pray, I can now meditate, I can do those things and feel closer to a higher power and feel closer to being connected to myself again. That division in me is not as great as it used to be. That shift somewhere happened and it's still happening. And I feel like as long as I'm still changing and growing, then that's something that it proves to me that the program works. I guess some other things I want to talk about are some of the things that have made a huge difference for me. As I said, having a sponsor who has a sponsor, and I get to hang out with them. I sponsor women, and they sponsor women, and we all learn and we all grow together. And I've not done it perfectly. I certainly haven't. I was so afraid I was going to hurt somebody. The first girl who asked me if I would sponsor her, I was terrified because I thought, well, what if I hurt her? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I do this incorrectly? I could really mess somebody up. And what I learned is if you do it with love, you can't do it wrong. As long as you're doing it from their heart, not just from that stupid brain of mine, I can give somebody something that I might have. But certainly that being authentic and coming from my heart is something that's had to be worked into me, because I used to think I had to sit in meetings and think of something brilliant to say. And then I realized at some point I had nothing brilliant to say. and I really didn't need to try to up somebody anymore. There have been lots of things that people have done that have given me the signals that I don't want to go there. Over the years, people would get in wrecks and things would happen, and I would say, maybe I don't want to do that. My best friend in high school, not Patty, but another friend, got pregnant. And that, that taught me a good lesson. That didn't look like that was a whole heck of a lot of fun. So there's a lot of things that have happened over the years, but then coming in here, hearing people's experiences, this is a little different shift on that, but hearing people's experiences and what they've done, we all lose a lot to our alcoholism. My alcoholism took away the ability to be present with people. It took away my ability to enjoy a lot of the years when my kids were growing up. It took away my chance to be with the person who I thought was the love of my life. By the way, when his mother did finally die, yes, at 97, I thought that we'd have another chance. I really thought we'd have another chance, and that was last summer. He was running a fever and not feeling well, and being tested for all this stuff, and he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he died in March. So, that whole thing, whether that would have ever worked out or not, I don't know, but I think my higher power was there with us all the way through all that. It was really hard for me. It's still hard for me, to think about all the things that I've given up. I've paid a high tuition for this school, and we all have, I'm sure. It might come in different forms, but it takes its toll. A couple things I want to say, that, I'm always going to be an alcoholic, but I don't think alcoholism has me, at least doesn't have me by the throat today. Some things that my favorite things that I've heard people say in the rooms. Just a couple things real quick. One is from a member of our group who's no longer with us, who passed away several years ago, Richard Page. And I love Richard, and I loved what he said, and this is one of those pearls I've taken home, and I'm going to share it with you. He'd say, it's not so much that I don't get my way, it's that I think I have a way. And that's just one that I just like took to my heart, and it helps me so much. And the other one, and I used to make fun of this guy in my little brain in the rooms. You know how somebody shares and they always say the same thing, and you always think, oh, here they go again, you know. And I would kind of mock him, and he would always say something, and it's Big Mike in Aberdeen, Big Mike, and I love Mike. And Michael says, sober through the grace of God in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I used to make fun of that, but I don't anymore. One day, I heard him say it, and I heard him hear, and I got it. And so I can say that, too. I'm sober through the grace of God in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you.
Thank you.